I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourner's Woods book series, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Today I'm reading Famous Monsters of Filmland, issue 171 from March 1981. I thought some of you might enjoy flipping through this vintage monster magazine with me, just in case you don't own your own copy of Famous Monsters, issue 171. Together, let's see what kinds of vintage monster goodness is in here. Lon Chaney Sr. graces the cover of Famous Monsters of Filmland, issue 171, in his persona as the Phantom of the Opera. Now, I got to point out to you before I even open the magazine, the cover is in terrible shape. It's basically coming right off the magazine. So I'm going to try to be as careful as I can, but just remember the magazine is not in new condition, okay? Well, it's no surprise. 1981, it's no surprise they're hitting us with Star Wars merchandise right away. Yoda mask. Hey, you want to hear my favorite Star Wars joke? Why did they make Star Wars 4, 5, and 6 before they made Star Wars 1, 2, and 3? Because in charge of planning Yoda was. I never get tired of that. Okay. All right, let's see what we got here. Hammering away at the horrors of Frankenstein. So Curse of Frankenstein was the first Hammer Frankenstein movie. Peter Cushing played Baron von Frankenstein. Christopher Lee played the monster. And in the sequels, Christopher Lee would not come back as the monster, but Peter Cushing did come back as Baron Frankenstein in almost all of them. All except for the film that was actually called Horror of Frankenstein. And a big theme in the Hammer Frankenstein movies was that the real monster was Baron Frankenstein himself, not the pitiful creatures that he kept churning out. Cushing defends the doctor. Frankenstein is no madman, claims Peter Cushing. He's ruthless sometimes because he's forced to be, but mad? No. So in the one Frankenstein film Hammer made that did not have Peter Cushing, they tried to reboot the franchise with a younger actor playing Dr. Frankenstein. And that film was Horror of Frankenstein. And it was not well received at all. And everyone wanted Peter Cushing back, so he came back and did Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. Birthday Witches. That's a Forrest J. Ackerman pun, if there ever was one. Ooh. I'm sure that Forrest J. Ackerman himself was buying stuff at the great movie memorabilia auction. He was a massive collector of memorabilia from science fiction and horror movies. House of Dracula, the movie poster is better than the whole movie. Flash Gordon movie. So I went to the Flash Gordon movie in the theater with a bunch of people, and I was the only one that liked it. I thought it was really good. But I think history has proven me right, because it's remembered much better now than the initial audience reaction, at least when I was there. I'll tell you one thing they did perfectly in the Flash Gordon movie is casting actors who looked like their counterparts from the old movie serials. They did such a good job of casting actors who looked like their predecessors. All except for the character of Clytus. Clytus was not a character that had ever been in Flash Gordon serials or in the comics, for that matter. He was an original character they made up for this movie. Topol as Dr. Zarkov. He was great. Remember him in For Your Eyes Only, the James Bond picture? And another James Bond villain, Max von Sydow. He played Blofeld in the unofficial James Bond movie, Never Say Never Again. The one where Sean Connery came back one last time. But he was a great example of how good the casting was for the movie. So you have to guess what movie or TV show this picture is from. And then here's the answer to last month's mystery picture. It's from Salem's Lot. Do you know what this one is from? I don't, so if you do know, you're ahead of me. Sammy Davis Jr., big horror fan. He's talking about some of his favorite horror films. Maybe you can get some Monster t-shirts. The Alien Invasion of Television. Well, the one I noticed immediately is the Fourth Doctor Terror of the Zygons scene. I was such a huge Whovian starting in the 70s. The first Doctor I ever saw was John Pertwee. He was the current Doctor at the time I started watching it. But I was a big fan of Tom Baker's too. I mean, who isn't? I saw him. I actually met him for like 2 seconds at a fan convention in like 1984 after he had stopped playing the Doctor. Yeah. This is the sad final episode of Lost in Space, The Great Vegetable Rebellion. Oh. Oh, yeah. This thing from Lost in Space freaked me out. You ever see those early episodes of Lost in Space before they made it all like comedic? Like maybe the first, I don't know, 14 or 15 episodes of Lost in Space where they were playing it much more seriously. They had some pretty far out stuff in that. Land of the Giants was another Irwin Allen TV series. The same guy that did Lost in Space. Ooh, I wonder if we'll get any Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea in here. That was an Irwin Allen show too. Ah! Remember the Zante Misfits from The Outer Limits? Oh, Dr. Smith. Oh, Kolchak Night Stalker. This is another Outer Limits monster. Another Outer Limits monster. Rare Treats. Choice Chaney. These are images of Lon Chaney Sr., the granddaddy of all horror actors like Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi. Before any of them, Lon Chaney Sr. wore the crown. He was in a lot of creepy movies, many of which are available on my YouTube channel in the podcast Silent Horror Films. You can see a lot of his signature roles, including the Phantom of the Opera. Oh, yeah. And this is from The Unknown. That is a very disturbing film. That's on my channel, too. You can check that out. Of course, now we're getting into the ads. You got to check out the Star Wars action figures. Any character that was ever in a single frame of film in Star Wars is going to get his own action figure. But this is actually more interesting. Look, the Star Wars Electronic Action Battle Computer. Wow. Ooh, and the radio-controlled Sandcrawler. But see, I wouldn't have liked this because it's not really to scale. The Sandcrawler is much bigger than that compared to the size of these figures. So I had a whole bunch of Star Wars action figures, but I did not have this, though, the Sandcrawler. I'm not sure I would sleep well in a Close Encounters of the Third Kind sleeping bag. I'd be afraid that like the aliens would come and take me in the night because they liked my sleeping bag. You know, I feel like Close Encounters of the Third Kind has been forgotten more than it should be, considering how big of a deal it was when it was out. I had this, the Battlestar Galactica model. Okay, who remembers this? For only $9.95, you can get a pinchful of quote-unquote genuine soil from Dracula's castle. Well, how do you know it's not just a pinchful of dirt from some guy's backyard? Because it's got a certificate of authenticity. Oh. Yeah. I did not send away for the pinchful of soil from Dracula's castle. If any of you did, please let me know what happened. Did it come? Did you get a certificate of authenticity? Did Dracula ever come trying to get his soil back? I had an idea for a Mourner's Woods book. You know, my books all take place in a haunted forest, Mourner's Woods. And I had an idea for a book that would not actually be set in Mourner's Woods, but it would be this. Somebody was selling as a gimmick a pinchful of Mourner's Woods earth, soil, and, you know, the evil of Mourner's Woods would spread beyond the forest borders that way. But maybe I'll do that at some point. I can only do about one of these books a year, though, so that's not a priority. But I might do it sometime. Oh. Han Solo's Revenge. Wow. Full-colored giant paperbacks of Dracula and of Frankenstein. More Star Wars action figures, of course. More Famous Monsters. You can see the difference. All the old Famous Monsters of Filmland. Gothic horror, Gothic horror, Gothic horror. Yep. Right up until Star Wars came out. And then all of a sudden, Star Wars cover, Star Wars cover, Star Wars cover. They were trying as hard as they could to stay relevant because that was where kids' interest was, Star Wars, once that came out. So Doctor Who had a whole bunch of paperbacks. Basically every episode of Doctor Who was the subject of a book in England, the Target books. So they tried to introduce these to the American market, and they chose 10 of them. If I remember right, they were all Tom Baker stories. At least most of them were Tom Baker. I think they were all Tom Baker stories. And they did well, but then they started selling the actual Target books here in America, and that took over. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're going to go to all the trouble to get a Millennium Falcon, you want the kind that you can open up and put the action figures in, right? That makes sense. More Star Wars. Radio-controlled R2-D2. Whole ton of Close Encounters stuff. I didn't know Popeye was born in a typhoon off Santa Monica, California. Wow. Spinach capacity, 36 tons. Oh, yeah. Oh, this time they have the Fang Mail continued way in the back of the magazine. The kids wrote in, talked about their favorite articles and their favorite movies, trying to get their picture in. This looks so much like the Battlestar Galactica Colonial Warriors costume, the original old school Battlestar Galactica. And they even have Galactica looking ships here. But this is not an actual licensed Battlestar Galactica product. It's just new Warriors battle jacket. Yeah. Oh, what a surprise. More Star Wars stuff. Nice. Listen, if you enjoy vintage horror and classic monsters, check out my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. They're available on Amazon.com. They're a series of stories set in a haunted forest. Each novel has a completely different cast of characters entering the forest and encountering ghosts and monsters and things that go bump in the night. I try very hard to recapture the feeling and vibe of 20th century monster movies in a contemporary setting. My books, again, are the Mourner's Woods books. My name is Paul Edwards. Thanks for spending some time looking through Famous Monsters issue 171 with me. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.